pages in the book and tell you about them. Anyway, this is a photograph, I believe, that Chuck shared with us. 1 month after the town of Cannleton was incorporated, $150 was appropriated for the Torrent number 1. It was stored at the cotton mill in a newly built engine house. The pumper was left in a corner of the cotton mill when Strongwall Mills, a division of Bemis Bag, purchased the mill in 1946. It was taken to their museum in St. Louis, Missouri. And I tried to look it up to see if maybe they still had it, but in 2019, Amcor purchased Bemis, and there's no longer a museum in St. Louis, so I don't know what happened to it. It's too bad. In 1836, James Clews from England, along with his wife and children, arrived in Troy, Indiana, and started the Indiana Pottery Company. Many local investors purchased stock in the company, unaware that Clews had gone bankrupt in England and had a reputation for being a bully. He was a hard man to get along with and did not have the respect of his workers. It was said that when Clews would walk through the plant, workers would throw wet clay at him. Clews was unsuccessful producing queensware, which is what he tried to do. Other owners of the plant manufactured Rockingham or Bennington style pottery, which is what you see here. The plant closed in 1891. Samuel Wilson, the last owner, broke up all the molds and used them for fill under Troy's Main Street, which was being paved at the time. John Herman and Company, a sawmill and woodworking business, was established in 1858 when Tell City was founded. In 1859, the Herman brothers started making wagons on the southwest corner of 9th and Bloom Street. The Owensboro Wagon Company purchased their entire stock in 1890, and in 1892, John Wisher bought the factory and began making canes. Herman Brothers opened an agricultural implement store at 610 Main Street in 1877. In 1897, the factory burned to the ground. So in 1906, Charles Herman opened the U.S. Hain Company and the U.S. Brick Company in 1907. So on to other things. Many Perry County residents went to Hawesville to catch the Texas, as it was called. The track construction began in 1882 from Louisville to Henderson, with trackage rights to St. Louis. They planned to build the line to Texas, but never did. Nonetheless, it was still called the Texas. And when I'm researching, I see that in articles, that the Texas this and the Texas that, and I never knew what it meant until I got this photograph. The Tarascon stern wheel packet was built in 1895 in Jeffersonville, Indiana. She's shown here in Owensboro, Kentucky, taking on passengers who were going to the very popular Rockport, Indiana Fair, along with several other smaller boats going the same place. The Tarascon sank in 1917 in Missouri. This is the 700 block of Main Street at the corner of Mozart, about 1900. The IOOF building is shown on the left. Henry Heck is shown at 715 Main Street, and Sandy Hess's barber shop is at 725 Main Street on the very right-hand side, and City Hall would be across the street. And they still had dirt streets then. The stern wheel packet Gertrude was built in 1895. It was owned by Captain Josh Absher of Cannleton, and Cannleton was Gertrude's home port. It ran from Cannleton to Evansville. M.A. Eberhard started a tobacco business with William Salm in Troy in 1881. That's him standing there. Mr. Eberhard and Charles Splater operated many sawmills in Perry and Spencer County and made thousands of railroad ties. Mr. Eberhard also owned large farms, operated a stave mill and a cone line. In 1896, he built this warehouse for his farm implement, feed, produce business on the south corner of Main and Walnuts in Troy. In 1890, Mr. Eberhard, along with John Ingenman and Archibald Hollerbach, built and opened a bank in Cannleton at the rear of the Odd Fellows building. The bank operated for only 5 years, but the building is still standing next to Tanya's house. Edward Champion raised and trained these oxen on his farm at German Ridge. He used miniature yolks to begin training calves. At 16 years of age, he's shown there, Edward joined this sawmill outfit with his oxen, and they were cutting virgin forest all over Perry County. They're shown here in Kentucky's virgin forest in 1904. This is the Bristow baseball team in 1905. Lee Mullen in the front left became superintendent of schools. P.J. Coltis back left became a doctor in Tell City. And Elmer Carr back right became Cannleton's chief of police. These guys got all dressed up, brought their beer mugs and their beer to Hanser Studio in Tell City and had a professional photograph taken in 1906. The Tell City Foundry and Machine Shop was established in 1868, 10 years after Tell City's founding. Today it's the Poorhouse Restaurant. These are mourners on their way to Cliff Cemetery from St. Luke's Church in Cannleton in 1909 for the funeral of Florence Combs. And I don't know who that is. Dr. Allenball of New Boston treated patients in Troy. He was instrumental in obtaining the rights to have the first telephone poles and lines installed in Troy. In 1912, he had one of the first Ford Roadsters in Perry County. Cannleton Hoosiers are posed at the home of Dr. James Bush on the south corner of 6th and Taylor Streets in Cannleton, about 1910. This is Main Street in Bristow, Indiana, in 1910. It was a busy place. The Cannleton Athletics baseball team about 1910 are posed in front of the Cannleton Opera House. The billboard on the far right advertises a popular 1910 silent film called Lena Rivers. The Opera House was raised to make way for Cannleton High School in 1922. The Grandview Traction Station was used extensively by Perry County citizens to travel to Evansville. The horse and wagons are transporting freight to and from the depot. The traction can be seen heading east on Main Street in this aerial photo of Rockport in 1910. The German Methodist Society Church was built in 1855 on the east corner of 7th and Taylor Streets in Cannleton. Sam and Gertie Anderson are seated on the courthouse lawn with the German Methodist Church in the background. This is Ann Manley's photo. And those are your grandparents, right?
Yeah, mine too. And Bill's too.
Yes.
Oh, right. Oh my gosh.
It was raised in 2020 when Norman Hayes' office was raised to build a parking lot. Tell City's 7th Street used to be lined with our finest homes. These are the homes of A.P. Finn, Jake Zerker, Jacob Schosch, and Mary Sidletsky. The bottom photo was the 7th Street home of January Weisenberg, who was a sawyer for the Tell City Chair Company. It was located catty-cornered across from today's poorhouse. Gustav Walter's home is on the far right. He was a partner in the Chairmakers Union. And the other two homes are Charles Rhodes and Andy Steinauer. The Obrecht home on 7th Street is shown on the lower half of this photo. It was a beautiful, stately home. The Sheldon residence on the northeast corner of 7th and Mozart was the future site of Blackie Tire on the top there. All gone now, almost. Almost every flood caused damage to these homes, especially the 1913 and 37 floods. Jacob Zerker's home is seen on the bottom. William Krogman lived beside the Morawick Hotel, and the Miller home in the 400 block of the 7th Street is also shown. Shriver's Drug Store was located at 501 Main Street, where Citizens National Drive-Thru is today. The door facing Humboldt Street was the post office entrance. This is Alfred Bolin. He's delivering a 16-foot beech log to the Tell City Chair Company in 1910. And he's seen here delivering a load of corn in 1914 on the streets of Cannleton. The Gilead Baptist Church in Tobinsport was founded by Reverend Charles Polk in 1816. The same year, Indiana became a state, and 42 years before Tell City was ever thought about. Reverend Polk represented Perry County at the June 10th, 1816 convention in Corydon when the first state constitution was adopted. The first church was a log structure. Then they built a meeting house where the Simons Cemetery stands, and the third building, shown here, was dedicated in 1876. In 1913, R.C. Edwards, a well-known wallpaper hanger from Cannleton, announced he was looking for investors to build his invention, a hydro airplane. He traveled to Washington, D.C. and obtained a patent. Shares of stock were sold at $20 each. In 1915, a long list of stockholders was listed on our newspaper, and it was a virtual who's who of Perry County businessmen who all hoped that Tell City would become a major airplane manufacturing community. A lot of them are standing there. The first trial flight, July 7th, 1915, failed, and the pilot nearly drowned. A second, a third, and a fourth attempt failed again, each time with a large crowd watching from the riverbank. These were the plans sent to the patent office. But Mr. Edwards returned to wallpaper hanging, and Shriver's Drug Store are the ones that employed him a lot. In their ads, they put his name in there. Mr. Patrick's son, John Patrick, the one with the beard, served in the Civil War, studied law, and was admitted to the Perry County Bar in 1884. The Patrick family lived at 832 9th Street. It's a beautifully restored home today. Mr. Patrick's son, Edwin D. Patrick, graduated from Tell City High School in 1912. He rose to the rank of Major General, but was killed in action during the Philippines campaign of 44-45. He was awarded the Distinguished Cross. He's buried at Greenwood Cemetery here in Tell City. But a Navy transport ship was named in his honor. The USNS General Edwin D. Patrick is seen there on the bottom. William Lehman set a speed record in 1912 by driving his Maxwell from Indianapolis to Cannleton, averaging 23 miles per hour for a total of 10 hours. 11 gallons of gas were required at nearly 21 miles per gallon. And it was so newsworthy, it was in the newspaper. Charles Solbrig sold Fords in Union Township in Perry County. He invited Ford owners to his home to celebrate his birthday in 1916. If you look close, there's a hefty piece of watermelon on the hood of most of those cars. Sam Rosenblatt opened Rosenblatt store in 1926. His nephew, Lacer Baker, operated the store for his uncle. The only time the store closed for any length of time was during the 1937 flood seen here. After 55 years in operation, Rosenblatt's closed in 1982. Hotel Cordova in Cannleton was owned by Henry Douche, who died at 45 years of age. He sold his hotel to George Pohl, owner of the adjoining Sunlight Hotel, shortly before his death. The newspaper advertised cockfights on the third floor of this hotel regularly. Frank Collins' Rock Island Quarry supplied most of the sandstone blocks used to build many foundations, basements, and buildings in Perry County. It was located across from the dam in Cannleton. The quarry operated from 1838 until 1952. Tell City's post office was located in many different locations. The first, in 1858, was likely in the Bott Building at the corner of Main and Blooms, but there's no official record of its location. In 1886, it moved to Schreiber's Drugstore. The door facing Humboldt was used, but when the post office moved to 510 Main Street in 1893, the door at Schreiber's was bricked up. In 1897, it moved again to 423 Main. It moved again to 418 Main and is seen in the lower right during the 1913 flood. Postmen are shown working inside the 418 Main location. And during the 37 flood, the post office was in the City Hall, which is that little photo. A new post office was built at 516 Main in 1935 through 37. The site work is being done in this photograph. When construction was nearly complete in January of 37, the 37 flood caused extensive damage to the new building. Today it's the home of the Post Restaurant. And then another new post office was built in 1982 at Main and Humboldt and remains in use today. This is Philip Grimison, I believe is how it's pronounced, in 1920, working at the Tell City Furniture Company, where he worked for 57 years, beginning in 1872 at the age of 15 until his death in 1930. You see little don't know, end tables or something they're building there. But Jacob Schaefer's father died when he was very young. Jacob became a shoemaker at the age of 13 to support his family. He opened Jacob Schaefer's shoe and harness shop, shown here, about 1900, when he would have been about 21 years old, at 504 Washington Street in Cannleton. And here he is again in 1940. He was a master shoe repairman for 50 years at the same location. When St. Paul's Sisters Home, or the St. Paul's Sisters Home, was located at 845 9th Street, the nuns moved to a different location in 1969. This home was built in 1950 and raised in 93 to make room for the church parking lot. Charles Paulin started his Blackie Tire Company in the Tell City Garage and Machine Works at 7th and Humboldt from 1922 to 26. So for 4 years, he was with the machine shop. Written on the back of this photo is Charles S. Paulin, Anton Paulin, and Joe Paulin at their home in 1925 with a Model T coupe. We got a lot of pictures from Blackie Paulin, and he barely mentions people's names, but he's very detailed about each vehicle. Written on the back of the top left photo is Blackie Tire and Battery, 7th and Mozart, Tell City, Indiana, December 16, 1954. Left to right, Wells Protzman, 80 years old, Nick Paulin, 79 years old, John Skull, 98 years old, Theodore Reisteiner and Blackie Paulin, 53 years old, with a 44-year-old EMF 1911 30 horsepower touring car, right-hand drive, transmission mounted on the rear end, 32 by 3.5 tires and Presto lights. Anyway, that was Blackie Paulin. The Apollonia store offered groceries, hardware, cloth materials, and gas pumps. Bridget and Henry Flamion purchased the store from Levi and Oscar LaGrange, who established the Apollonia Post Office in the store from 1910 to 1955. The LaGranges had purchased the store from Tom Lasher. Henry and Bridget added a dance hall when they owned the store, seen on the far left. As many as 60 couples attended the Saturday night dances until there was a fatal shooting at the dance in 1931 and it never reopened. Dan Sweeney was one of the most beloved people in Cannleton's history. He would walk into people's homes without knocking and ask for tobacco, lunch, or anything he needed. He was never refused. Dan attended all the funerals in Perry County, even those out in the county, walking to get there. When he died in 1930, his funeral was the largest in the county's history. A large photo of Dan hung in the Cannleton Post Office or courthouse for many years. I don't know why. This is Robert and William Lambeck purchased the feed store at 1047 12th Street, where Carmen's Auto Body Shop is today. It was previously run by the Bergenroth brothers of Troy. The Lambecks added a grocery store to the back they held their grand opening September 8, 1929. William Lambeck's daughter, Marie Kress, who used to be a member of the historical site, worked in the grocery store after school. That's the No, that wasn't you. It's a plate somebody brought in. This is the 1926 Tell City Tigers, posed at the Athletic Association ballpark, which is located where Noble's IGA is today. Cannleton High School's first organized orchestra is written on the back of this circa 1928 photo. Mr. Andrew Little is seen on the far right. He wrote their school song. This photo is the 1927 Tell City High School sectional champs, which Ann Manley shared with us. Tony Oberhausen is seated in the front holding the basketball. And Charlie Schreiber, with his skinny legs, are second from the left in the front.
Ann, did you go to that game?
This is 3rd Street in Cannleton, which was very busy about 1920. St. Luke's can be seen on the left and Rosenblatt's is on the right. And Tell City High School is barely visible in the background. Lots of cars. This is the 1929-1930 Cannleton High School. They had a girls' basketball team. Cannleton was way ahead of its time. Before 1972, when Congress passed Title IX, forbidding sex-based discrimination in sports, only about 294,000 girls were playing high school sports in the U.S. in 1971, compared with 3.7 million boys. But Cannleton had a girls' basketball team. And this was the boys' team, the same year, 29-30. Huffman Mill was established in 1912 by George Huffman. He purchased the land from the U.S. government. Thomas Lincoln and his son Abraham made trips on horseback to the mill. A community developed around the mill. There was a sawmill, a general store, a church, school, doctor, carpenter, and a post office was established in 1883. That's the mill. This is Dick Elvert, a well-known riverman from Cannleton. Each Friday, he went about the city selling nicely dressed fish. He was usually first on the scene of a drowning and recovered at least 15 bodies. In his lifetime, at least 4 people owe their lives to him. It was never too cold, hot, or stormy for him to answer the call of distress. He was always on the river. There were many names for this building: the Perry County Infirmary, the Asylum for the Poor, the Insane Asylum, the County Home, or the County Poor Farm. It was located at the site of Best Chair today, a half a mile east of Cannleton. The first poorhouse was located in Rome in 1848. It moved to Cannleton in 1866 when this 2-story brick asylum was built. A wing was added in 1875. The poor and indigent were cared for by our county until arrangements could be made for permanent housing. The mentally ill were sent to the Indiana Hospital for the Insane in Indianapolis. Chuck Paline wrote an extensive book about the poorhouse. He did a lot of research, and what's in our book is his story. It's very good. Tell City High School Band in 1934 is shown. Bert Finn is the tuba player in the back on the far left. That's Tell City's high school. And there's Cannleton's high school, similar uniforms. Also the same year, 1933. This is the inside of the cotton mill with a lot of the machinery packed in there tight. Cotton mill employees are shown with spools of thread at Strongwall Mills, a division of Bemis Bag, who purchased the mill in 1946.